Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the Dungeon Dive, we are taking a look at a bunch of stuff from a creator who goes by the name of Jamzilla. And you can find his info at jamzilla.itch.io. Or you could pause the screen right now and use this QR code to get to where you need to go. Okay, so a while back, probably 6 months or so, I ordered two little zines, and they were called The Lords of Bile Deep and Cyst. And I thought these were pretty cool. And then on the last episode of Alone Together with the Dungeon Dive and Perplexing Ruins, Alan was talking about Jamzilla, and Alan said that he contacted him and sent him a little package with some more stuff. And I didn't realize that this creator had more stuff out there. So I went to itch.io and I purchased the Tombs of Agalash, and I talked to Jamzilla, and I let him know that I was going to be covering some stuff on the Dungeon Dive. So he sent me a cool little package along with the little zine that I purchased. Now, one of the perks of doing the Dungeon Dive is every once in a while a creator will send me kind of a little care package, and it's really cool. I love that. It's one of my favorite things about doing the channel. And in this little package that Jamzilla sent me, he actually drew this barbarian warrior here on the package by the blade of the dark moon. Thank you. So very cool. I love this. This really makes me happy. It makes all of this kind of like worthwhile. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the stuff he sent me. And then we're going to go into a really kind of a long, maybe not too long, but a long, somewhat related tangent into kind of art trading cards. And I would kind of like to see some art trading cards focusing on these indie tabletop artists. And I know Alan and I from Perplexing Ruins, we are talking a little bit about putting together some kind of maybe a zine focusing on art, but I would really like to do some artistic trading cards. But as many of you know, sometimes these tabletop RPGs, these indie games that are in zine format, they often straddle the line between artistic project and game. They have some focus a little bit more on mechanisms, some focus a little bit more on art, but it's like this nebulous kind of gray area between presenting the information as an art piece and presenting it as mechanisms in a book. And I think Jamzilla takes that just about as far as it can possibly go. And the lines between art project and game are blurred into oblivion with this stuff. It ranges from one end of the spectrum to a pretty strong game, like Lords of Bile Deep is a game in that it has mechanisms and it has some rules, all the way down to Today's Porridge, which is really just an artistic zine. And these zines, these collage style zines, they do harken back to kind of the golden age of zines in the 1980s. In the late 90s, early 2000s, I was actually a book sale manager at Tower Records. And as part of that, I was in charge of one of the largest magazine racks on the West Coast. I think we had over 5,000 different titles. And we would carry a lot of zines. We would get one or two copies of various collage zines, and they would always sell, and that always made me happy. But anyways, let's take a look at this first one here. So this is Lords of Bile Deep, and this is from Jamzilla in 2022. And this says, "For centuries, the Bile Lords brought gunk and pestilence upon the lands, but no more. Bile Keep, their fabled bastion of slime and sludge, no longer vomits upon the earth. The lords stay silent upon the hilltop, leaving their pestulous lands in pandemonium. Why?" So one of the things that has drawn me into this whole world of indie tabletop games is my desire, my love for collecting books, and my love for books as as works of art, of physical books representing something beyond just the fiction. And I also love how the art is incorporated into the fiction. And I love the way that a lot of these display their fiction in art with words and how the page is laid out. All of this kind of stuff just sparks my imagination and it makes it fun to experience, even if I don't play the games. I don't know if I will ever play a game of Lords of Bile Deep. However, I will use this for inspiration and things. I will just pick it up and read it and have a good time. Experience it as a work of fiction and maybe not so much a game. So here's the rules. Here's how to play the Lords of Bile Deep. One player is the narrator. They describe to the other players the happenings of the Bile lands and the awful things within it. Other players each control a champion whose fate is intertwined with that of Bile Keep. Players must decide whether their champion is born of meat, magic, or love, as well as any other important details of their life. Whenever a champion does something difficult, their player flips a coin and hopes for heads. If the champion is born to do this task, the coin may be flipped again. Okay, those are the rules. That's it. One page, basically one little paragraph there. But then you get some pretty cool roll-up charts to roll up some various things of bile and plums. You get a D12 list of creatures, a D12 list of places, of treasure, and of curiosities. Who meets you on the road? This is a D20 random encounter chart for road travel. Then we get into basically what is fiction. It's presented as fiction, but these would be prompts for you to run your games. So you might encounter the Wicked Witch. The lords had shared their slime with all for ages long since past, but now their slope does flow no more. Their lands are dry and cracked. Their hills of bile, now cold and black, are dry and hard as stone. Their roads are steep, they'll break your back. Bile Keep is overthrown. And the rest of the book kind of continues in this fashion. We have some information about the wasted warden thing, the miracle at the meadow. I love this collage here. That is so cool. I love the way that he used depth of field blurring on these 2D cut out flat planes in this collage. I love that image there. I would love to get kind of a small poster of that image would be amazing. Wrath of the Gargoyle, the Dying Lord of Pus. Bile Keep is besieged. And then we have the slime slick dungeons deep. Slipping through the still slick hole, you tumble down into a passage below the keep. As you crumple into a heap, some creature traps you in its net. Greasy and stone-like, it lets out an awful laugh as it loads you onto its back. Tied up and unable to move, it croaks a song as it carries you along, full of ribbits and goblin slurs, until at last it lets you down. All right, so what do you do after that? That's a whole little adventure right there. Then the gutters down below, the deepest bowels of the earth. The wizard of the breaking thorn. Will the acrid bile lands remain steaming with sick, or turn green by the roots of some ancient tree? And here we have a really cool little appendix in. So Angel's Egg from Mamoru Oshii. Fantastic movie. Super early 80s anime. Very weird. Very dark, weird fiction on screen. My buddy and I did a live synth score to Angel's Egg at Scarecrow Video here in Seattle many years ago. Last and First Man. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I know it's done by Johann Johannesburg, a composer who just died recently, and he was supposed to do the music for the new Blade Runner, but they fired him, unfortunately. And he made a movie based off of the Olaf Stapleton novel. And if you have not read Olaf Stapleton, I highly, highly, highly recommend Olaf Stapleton. But then we have Princess Mononoke, Puparia, I don't know that. The Color of Pomegranates, I've always heard of but never seen. Of course, The Dark Crystal, The Green Knight, Lord of the Rings, the boss looks like the old, my mind is blank, but the old animated movie, Ralph Bakshi, right? And the Neverending Story, of course, games, The Caves of Cud, RuneScape, Talisman, The Adventurer, The Artifact, The Eternal Caverns of Urk, and Warhammer Fantasy Battles, literature, Berserk, Dune, Ozymandias, Paradise Lost, The Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings, and music. It's funny, there is so much music out there that whenever people list influence of music, I've almost never heard of it, even though I listen to like 2 new albums a week and I'm constantly trying to find new music. I have not heard of any of these bands, so these will be good to check out. But we have Beardy, Cirrus and Calypso in the Deep Time, Depression Cherry, Murder of the Universe, Nanagon Infinity, and Nihilloxica. So that was a look at Lords of Bile Deep. And then we have Cyst. So Cyst is kind of like his main game system. And it is very similar to Lords of Bile Deep as far as the mechanisms go. Again, how to play. It's the same rules there. And then we also get just some random charts. So here we have ways to roll up adventurers and argonauts. You have a sign, a nature, your garb, your features, 1 and 2, and a tool that you might have with some classes that you can take there. And then we have some various charts to roll up for places and things. Roll 4 8-sided dice and venture forth. So this is a way that you could create a little adventure just using these 4 D8 tables there. We have ways to roll up creatures and cretins. We have their creature, we have their main, we have the proclivity, and their trappings. Caverns and catacombs. Again, this is another 4D8 chart where you can roll up things in your dungeon or catacombs or your caverns. You have their denizen, the curiosity, the happenings, and the treasure. It's funny, the more you start to look at these zines, the more you realize that a lot of the creators who do this kind of collage and this photo bashing, they use similar images. This image here, this weird bird thing, I think is also used in Glimpses of a Dying World, I think. Yep, there it is. So a lot of this art by dead people, that's what a lot of the Morkborg artists call it, where they use just old public domain art assets and free art, and they photo bash into their own creations. They sample it like a hip hop artist, a DJ would sample music. So I like sampled art a lot. Monsters and magics there, more charts to roll up, heroes and happenings. And then just that was Jamzilla from 2022. And then this is an adventure called the Tombs of Agalash, an adventure location for Cyst. And these are kind of just weird little source books for Cyst. This has probably the most game out of the 4 little Cyst zines here. But this has some random charts that you can roll on. But again, I think the main purpose of these is just to be really cool little tangible works of art and fiction that you can enjoy. And then here we have a Pangram. These are even more just kind of collage works of fiction and of art. And then we have The Great Immortal Ing and Today's Porridge. Today's Porridge is definitely the weirdest one. This just straight up looks like something that I would have carried and tried to sell at Tower Records back in the day. A total little punk thing there. But then Jamzilla also sells stuff like these posters, and you can buy them in certain sizes. So we have this one here, and these are collage things that he has put together with scissors, razor blades, and glue, he says. And each one of these on the back side has some random encounter tables. So you might have D20 roadside encounters or D20 dungeon encounters there. Here we have D20 wizards and wastrels. And we have here 20 character backgrounds. And then also we have D20 dungeon encounters. So if you just want to buy some cool art and have a little bit of a random encounter chart on the back, you can do that as well. These are super cool. I'm going to order some of these and just frame them for my game room because I think they're really nice pieces of art, and I like collage art a lot. And then we have here, before we get into the tangent here, we have the Court of the Crumbling King, and this is an adventure for Cyst. It's more like a short story that you play as an adventure, I guess. You would run it as an adventure after reading the short story there. But now, along with this really cool stuff that he sent along to me and this drawing, he also sent me a couple art trading cards. And of course, here we have Frank Frazetta. And I don't know if Jamzilla knows that I like Carl Edward Wagner, but this was the cover for Bloodstone. But it got me to thinking, for the last few months of the pandemic, I think, or late pandemic era, I started buying artistic trading cards for some of my favorite fantasy authors. And I come to realize that you could use these as encounter prompts for your game sessions. And a lot of them have some really cool art and lore. So we'll take a look at these in a bit. But this set here, I don't have enough pages. I don't have any pocket pages for these. But this is the Michael Plug set. Michael Plug, a fantastic author, a fantastic artist, I should say. And these are a bunch of his famous paintings and drawings. And these are just, I mean, oh my God, look at that. And it has a little piece of fiction on the back. The Dark Lord called, and the lifeless shells of evil soldiers emerged from the depths of hell. That is super cool. So you could have a random draw of one of these cards to have an encounter. I love this drawing here. And she's like hiding the sword behind her cloak there. And her cloak, I should say. And this is, the maid was the seventh daughter of the seventh daughter, which meant that she was destined from birth to be the fateful bride of the fearsome swamp ogre. However, the strong-willed maiden went to the unholy alliance armed with a sword, and instead of gaining a wife, the ogre lost his life. That is awesome. That is such a cool story to go along with that picture. Some kind of major fight there with a giant cyclops, some kind of Naga princess. But yeah, Mike Plug, his art is so cool. I love it. It's very cartoony. It's bubbly. Kind of reminds me of Sam Keith a little bit. But very cool art there. And then here we have some of my Jeffrey Catherine Jones cards. But the rest of those are in this binder here. So this binder, I have a whole bunch of complete sets here. I have my Wayland set, my Michael Wayland set here. Wayland is one of my favorite fantasy authors, probably top 3. But he has all kinds of great stuff. Now, these don't really have the fiction on the back. These have Michael Wayland wrote a little bit about each piece here. So, like for this Gates of Averil, the cover for the C.J. Cherry novel he did, another C.J. Cherry novel. Here we have, let's see, the Dark Tower. So he did all of the art in the first Dark Tower. If you don't know who Michael Wayland is, but you've also been into fantasy fiction, you will see a lot of books that you recognize here. There's one of the Lovecraft collection covers he did, Fafhrd and Grey Mouser, another of the C.J. Cherry novels there, the same trilogy. So all kinds of really cool stuff here. I love just looking at these and then tracking down the book that they were part of. These are from the DAW, the Year's Best Horror. And I think this volume here, I think that was volume 10, if I remember. But I think Carl Edward Wagner was actually the editor on that volume there. Yeah, I've got that. That's another Year's Best Horror collection there. Very cool. I love Michael Wayland's art. His art is just amazing. So colorful and vibrant. Full of life, really. And then we get into some Ken Kelly here. And Ken Kelly is more into like the school of kind of Boris Vallejo, but I really like him. He gets closest probably to Frank Frazetta and how he presents like human skin and the fleshiness of his art. And some of his stuff is really cool. He did the covers for the Horse Clan novels. And those were kind of these post-apocalyptic sword and sorcery novels there. I read a lot of those as a kid. I've been wanting to pick them up again. I'm not sure if they stand up. I'm thinking maybe I should just keep those as good memories in my mind. I'm not sure. If anybody's read the Horse Clan books recently and can let me know if I should go and like track those down. But then here, of course, probably needs no introduction there. But we have the Larry Elmore there. Tons of the Dragonlance novels and old school D&D. Larry Elmore was probably Probably one of the first artists that a lot of us got into. His art just absolutely makes me think of my childhood in the 80s. It's like the illustrations of my childhood in the 80s could have been done by Larry Elmore. Okay, and then each one of these sets also comes with a checklist, so you can make sure that you have all of your cards there. And then next up, we have Bernie Wrightson. So Bernie Wrightson, a comic book artist and illustrator. I think I was probably first introduced to Wrightson because he did the art for Stephen King's Cycle of the Werewolf, Silver Bullet. But his like rippling flesh just looks so cool. He draws really, really good zombies and golems. Very organic looking, and lots of monsters and vampires and just weird, weird creatures. Kind of EC Comics-esque, I would say. And then we get into one of my favorite, probably another top 5, and that is Jeffrey Catherine Jones. Their work is just exquisite. And these have some very cool lore to go along with the cards. So in her believing hands, she held the blood of all her broken stars. Okay, that's super cool. You could totally come up with some kind of adventure using that prompt. Or here we have this one here, and this says, sudden encounter. The roar of fear and blood deafened the sound of anyone or anything that might be screaming. So these could be used to generate all kinds of random encounters. And I love Jeffrey Catherine Jones. Their art is so good. So many of my sword and sorcery books have art by Jeffrey Catherine Jones. But a very unique style, painterly, watercolors. I think watercolors and maybe mixed medium of watercolor and color pencil. I'm not exactly sure, but their style had a very unique look that stood out from a bunch of the more like cookie cutter style fantasy artists. But yeah, collecting these artist trading cards is really fun. And I think it would be really awesome to see these indie tabletop artists like Jamzilla, like Alan from Perplexing Ruins, and other artists having a set of trading cards to commemorate their art, I think would be super, super cool. So, all right, guys, what's something a little bit different today? More of a focus on art. But I think you're going to be seeing more stuff like this on the Dungeon Dive as I kind of get back into what my original purpose was with the Dungeon Dive. And that was kind of laid out in my big kind of first big sprawling review of Dungeon Degenerates, where I spent 40 minutes and didn't even really talk about the game, but just wanting to draw attention to artists and focus on this kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. Hope you guys like it. Please let me know if you do, and let me know if you collect any of these artist trading cards and some of your favorite sets. Maybe some artists that you would like to see have their own set of trading cards. What would you like to see in something like that? Maybe we can make that happen at some point. So, all right, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will talk to you later. Bye bye.